The Fate franchise is the attractor of much discussion, both negative and positive. And it has come a long way since its inception in 2004, as a romance visual novel of all things, to today being one of the most well-known and accomplished franchises in the anime medium, with mobile games like Fate Grand Order earning over $4 billion just in 2020. Still, many critique the Fate series for being difficult to get into. And it's easy to see why with the abundance of shows available, as well as all the different watch orders and routes you could take to watch the show. That, by the way, somehow is supposed to be connected. Despite all this, I can without a doubt say that some of the entries in the Fate series are some of the greatest fictional works I have ever had the pleasure of watching. Despite the apparent difficulty of watching the series, I would still recommend it thoroughly, as I believe it isn't actually that hard to get into. Because, why would I otherwise have watched almost every single Fate anime there is? Because I have a complete lack of respect for my own presumably valuable time, and I'm at this point too emotionally invested in the Fate, well, simply because I find it very enjoyable. But I'd be damned if anyone ever told me I need to watch all of it. The thing with the Fate series is that you don't really need to watch every single available show. And if you're for any reason interested in the Fate series, but just want to know the main setting, the main characters, and the main plot, you can literally just skip 13 out of the 15 currently available shows and movies, and just focus on 2 of them for now. If you then want to watch anything else, that's up to you. And although I would recommend some shows over others, ultimately it's down to you what you find interesting. Now these 2 shows that I just singled out, they are in order Fate Zero and Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works, with the potential of having both my figurative and literal arms snapped in half by the more hardcore Fate enthusiasts. I humbly recommend that you either watch Fate Zero or Unlimited Blade Works first. Let me explain without going into any kind of spoilers. Fate Zero is the prequel to Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works, and so they flow into one another perfectly. The reason why I start watching the Fate series with either one of these is because both of them work as great introductions to general themes, character archetypes, and stories that Fate series usually operate on. However, they are still a bit different from one another in how they present the stories, and depending on what type of anime you usually like to watch, one of them could be simply more interesting to start with than the other. Once more, without any spoilers, Fate Zero details the event of the 4th Holy Grail War, set 10 years before the 5th Holy Grail War in Unlimited Blade Works. A Holy Grail War being a deadly competition that decides the ownership of the wish-granting Holy Grail, through the participation of 7 heroic spirits and 7 masters. One master summons one heroic spirit, that heroic spirit being a person throughout history that has performed heroic deeds, such as for example King Arthur or Hercules. The master is usually, but not strictly, a mage, being knowledgeable on the use of magecraft and preferably some kind of combat skill. When all 7 masters have summoned their heroic spirits, or as they are usually called, servants, the war commences, and they have to duke it out until just one master-servant pair remains. Fate Zero very early on gives a lot of exposition and details about the Holy Grail War. The premise is very much the same as Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works, namely a battle royale between 7 masters and servants, but Fate Zero is also arguably the darker story of the 2. The themes that Fate Zero handles are plentiful, but instead of any one of these themes taking over the story, it balances them in proper amounts and only elevates the series and its writing. It discusses the cruelty of battle, the futility of hope and peace, the true meaning of a king, and the flaws of all ideologies, which is arguably the main theme of Fate Zero. The show is also ripe with brilliant and individually tragic characters with compelling character motivations, backstories, and themes ingrained into their writing. As a cast of characters, they have interesting dynamics, and many dimensions to them. Not to mention that every character is shrouded in an area of moral grey, and even the protagonist can be viewed as being morally wrong many times in the series. And this is of course without even mentioning the absolutely stunning production value that the Fate series otherwise is famous for, and Fate Zero is no exception. With both brilliant animation and art, the series also features some of my favorite soundtracks in all of anime, like for example You Are My King by Yuki Kaja. Fate Zero is also definitely the more dialogue-heavy series of the two, taking ample time to give every character its spotlight and explain their motivations. This isn't to say that having a lot of good dialogue is a bad thing, but I thought it worth mentioning as Unlimited Blade Works doesn't necessarily feature as much dialogue or heavy exposition, as it could be a deciding factor as to which one of the two series you would want to watch first. Quick side note though, while the dialogue in Fate Zero can be just someone explaining something for 2 minutes, it can also be this. All in all, Fate Zero is a dark, action-filled tragedy that with incredibly compelling themes, animation, and characters break the norm of what a traditional cast of characters and their roles should be like. I recommend that you start watching the Fate series with Fate Zero if you like the previously mentioned reasons, but also if you're a fan of other shows like Baccano, Madoka Magica, or Future Diary. Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works also explains the basic rules of the Holy Grail War, although not always as extensively as Fate Zero. This is once more not necessarily a bad thing, as it does allow the general plot to move at a faster pace, which depending on how you like your stories is either positive or negative. I mentioned earlier how Fate Zero is the darker show of the two, but that isn't to say that Unlimited Blade Works is some happy-go-lucky adventure, even if there definitely is more of a shonen vibe to it than Zero. Unlimited Blade Works is still plenty dark, and similarly features a cast of 7 masters and 7 servants, although we now mostly follow our main protagonist, Shiro, which means that we now get to experience the whole Grail War from the eyes of someone who has no idea what it actually entails. This creates a more personal experience with the events in the story, as well as giving more characterization to a few characters over the many. Once more, this could be both positive or negative depending on your disposition. The shonen vibes I mentioned earlier mainly comes from the fact that Unlimited Blade Works utilize a lot more usual shonen tropes compared to Fate Zero. There are definitely more powering up, tsunderes, and the usual happy comedy situations in Unlimited Blade Works. But this could also stem from the fact that we are following a 17-year-old student around, instead of a 29-year-old mage assassin. Whatever your preferred storytelling method is, the result is that Unlimited Blade Works operates around a more standard shonen setting. This, however, does not make it lose its usual Fate edge in the least. The show still features the clashing of ideals, although between fewer characters, arguably even more stunning production value than Fate Zero, and a fantastic set of characters as well. The clash of ideals that occurs between a few characters in Unlimited Blade Works equals the splendidness of many in Fate Zero. Instead of getting to know each and every single character motivation, you are instead given more detail and greater depth in just a few of them, which allows for greater discourse about singular ideals rather than many at the same time. This can be great if you prefer focusing on just a couple of thought processes at a time, instead of each single one in the series. Oh, by the way, did I mention the animation yet? All in all, Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works is a suspenseful, thrilling and emotional story, with well-made and interesting ideological conflicts between the main key characters, absurdly good animation and art, and a strikingly good soundtrack. I recommend that you start watching the Fate series with Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works if you like the previously mentioned reasons, but also if you're a fan of other shows like Demon Slayer, the Index series, or Fullmetal Alchemist. That's about everything I wanted to have said about Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works and Fate Zero, and I hope it helped or somehow convinced you to get into the Fate series. Do keep in mind, however, that these recommendations are just that, recommendations. Just because you usually like or watch one type of show, it doesn't mean that you would not instantly enjoy other type of shows. So don't let my recommendations hold you back, and watch anime in whatever way suits you the best. Fate Zero is available to watch legally on Crunchyroll and Netflix, and Fate StayNight Unlimited Blade Works is available to watch legally on Funimation or Netflix as well. Thanks for watching, and Vale!